Hello everyone and welcome to the top 10 characters for autoing on Bleach Brave Souls. Autoing has become increasingly more useful since the addition to autoing on co-op, and since inheritance zones and droplet zones were added, so being able to auto grind those is actually really important. Before I get started, I want to remind you that there are a lot of great characters who didn't even make it on the list, so just because you don't see your favorite character for autoing doesn't necessarily mean they're not good, because believe me, there are some really top tier characters for autoing that didn't even make it. That said, let's begin. Starting off the list at number 10 is Ryokan, who not only has a ridiculously high attack, but also a plus 50 bruiser and a 20% damage reduction deck. Which, as you all know, is going to be a huge factor in this list, because being able to reduce damage allows the character to go on for a lot longer. And with Ryokan, it can be stacked up to 80%, meaning he would only take a fifth of the damage. Ryokan is also ranged, which means he can deal all this damage from far away. And while range can sometimes be problematic, because it's harder to hit anything that's trying to freeze or burn you, it's for the most part a good thing. Though I will say it is a lot slower for grinding than up close combat. Still though, Ryokan's net string is pretty fantastic, and it ends with a shot that fires 3 arrows that all have a 120% mag, making it really hurt if all 3 hit one enemy. To top it all off, Ryokan has a human affiliation, so for the few raids that do have some of the enemies have killers, none of them would apply to him.
ようやくまともにやり合う気になったようだな。
Up next on the list, we have White Zangetsu, who is one of the fastest attacking characters in the game when it comes to his nat string. His nat also has pretty great range, and all of his strong attacks can inflict weakening, which really comes in handy for him because he has Debilitator. His strong attack 1 has really great range, his strong attack 2 is a moving vortex that surrounds him that almost doubles as a shield and has a really high possibility of inflicting weakening because it hits so many times. And finally there's his strong attack 3 that's really unlike any other thing we've seen in the game so far, as it force pushes enemies together before hitting them with the blast that knocks them all down. Not only is it one of the coolest things you or a loved one has ever seen, but it also has the high possibility of inflicting weakening because it hits so many times, not as much as strong attack 2, but still a good amount. It also puts all the enemies in one place, perfect for Zangetsu to continue his normal attack onslaught, and if they happen to catch weakening along the way, his extremely high attack, 50% bruiser, and 20% nat link make the damage all the more painful.
せっかくの祭りじゃもっと楽しめ
You can't really see Zangetsu without also seeing Yoroichi. They share a lot of similar traits, from their really high attack to the nat link, to the really high bruiser, to the debilitating moving vortex. Of course, for autoing, Yoroichi's paralysis is a little bit more useful. You see, if an enemy is weakened, they're still able to inflict status ailments on them, whether it be burn, freeze, or poison. But if they're paralyzed, they're pretty much stuck, and it gives Yoroichi the chance to come in for the kill. And you could bet it'd be a pretty swift one. Much like Zangetsu, her attack speed is also really fast, which is good because that means the enemies don't really have a chance to fight back. She also has that strong attack 2 vortex move that I mentioned earlier that also doubles as a shield, protecting her and stunning the enemies around her. It's also pretty useful in autoing co-op because you get to paralyze all the enemies around you and make the raid easier for the rest of the team.
これはプレゼントだ。僕と一緒にいよう。ずーっとね。
Now, I know what you might be thinking, this is pretty much the nat list from last week. Well, not exactly. The two do have a lot in common. One thing being Tsukishima here, who also made it on last week's list, spoiler. But what can I say, nat characters are typically good for autoing, and this Tsukishima is absolutely no exception. He's a ranged character, which is a plus, with a really high attack and a nat link, not to mention a 40% bruiser, and he can inflict debilitating weakening on his strong attack 3, 1, and his normal attack, which is a piercing attack, significantly increasing the possibility of inflicting weakening. Now if you're thinking, big deal, strong attack 2 doesn't inflict weakening, or naive Jimmy, his strong attack 2 is a shield move, which in addition to actually doing damage, also puts a shield around Tsukishima, which protects him from 3 hits, and the shield around the rest of the team, which protects for 1. Tsukishima is well equipped to take on quests on auto, though granted it may take him a little bit longer than Yoroichi and Zangetsu, but the chances of success are higher. Plus having him in co-op means shields for everybody, including those who aren't autoing, and that can prove to be a major help.
どいつもこいつもトロトロしやがって。行くぜ。
Next up on the list is a character that actually made it at number 1 the last time I made this list, Lost Agent Kampachi. This shouldn't come to a surprise for anybody who's been playing this game a long time. Kenny has both poise and flurry, which let him basically just mow down enemies, as his normal attacks hit twice. And because it's auto, his lack of a second flash step doesn't really matter here, because when was the last time you saw a CPU use flash step? Still though, this guy's pretty much a beast, having essentially the equivalent of 100% bruiser, as well as a DR link that is stackable up to 76%. On top of all of this, he also has a strong attack 2 that's a boost move, increasing his attack, defense, and focus by 33%. So while he is still killable, it is very difficult to do it. And while the boost move only lasts 10 seconds, it does affect the entire team, whether it's single player or co-op. It still amazes me how relevant this character is, even though he is pretty old at this point. Next on the list, we have Manga Sachi, who is currently tied with the second highest attack in the game, but when it comes to damage output, he ranks at number 1. This is because in addition to having that ridiculously high attack, he also has a 20% nat link and flurry, as well as poise, which is basically the equivalent of having a 140% bruiser. Sticking a DR build on this guy is definitely not a bad idea. He may not have the damage reduction that Kenny has, but he more than makes up for it in raw power. And although most people will chappy him, his strong attacks aren't exactly useless. They have excellent range, and because of his high attack, they still do a decent amount of damage, even if his SP is at 0. If for nothing else, they're also good for pushing enemies away and guard breaking, making room for more of that normal attack damage, making quick work of any enemy that would be unfortunate enough to cross paths with this guy. Coming in at number 4 is Lulu. Now at this point I would like to take the time to invite those of you who are currently typing that I'm an idiot because Sajin is better than Lulu to relax. And to keep in mind that even though a character may be higher on this list, doesn't necessarily mean they're a better character, just better for autoing. Now that I've reminded you of that, we can continue. Lulu is definitely better for autoing, as she's a healer, and her strong attack recharge link allows her to be able to heal at least 12% faster, even if you do decide to equip her with damage reduction or normal attack damage, which would also not be a bad choice. After all, she has a really high attack and a 40% bruiser. Lulu is also ranged, meaning she can do damage from a distance and play it safe, though it will likely take a little longer. And as I mentioned earlier, Lulu is a healer, and this is by far the most important part about this character. For autoing, being able to heal is extremely important, for reasons that are way too obvious to have to explain. And having a healer in a co-op run means that the entire team gets to benefit from it. Though because it is auto, it is kind of random when the characters are gonna heal, but it's still very, very useful. And as I mentioned earlier, thanks to that soul trait, it means she gets to do it just a little bit faster than most other healers. Yama may not be able to heal, but his sheer damage output and usefulness is what puts him so high up on the list. Like a few characters before him, he also has poise and flurry, and one of the highest attacks in the game. What the other characters don't have, however, is his ability to inflict burn on absolutely everything, which really comes in handy when you're using this character on auto, especially if you DR him, because his can stack up to 76%, meaning you have the defense of the DR and the offense of the burn, so you're pretty much set in both directions. And there's not really a need to do a normal attack damage link on this guy, since his fire is gonna take care of everything anyway. And because this is auto we're talking about, most people are gonna use chappies, so his SP will be at 0. Fortunately, that doesn't matter for him. His strong attacks hit so many times you'll likely to inflict burn on one of them, and you'll be good to go either way.
カカオソサエティの古より伝わる魔導いきますミントショコラメイズ
What's better than having a healer? Having a healer with damage reduction. That's what puts Valentine's Day now at number 2. Sure, she may not have the highest attack for your typical auto build, but that doesn't matter. She's ranged, she has damage reduction that can be stacked up to 76%, and she's a healer, meaning on the off chance you do end up getting her health low, she can just heal. And because it'll take a long time for the enemies to bring her health down again, she'll be ready to heal again when they do. But again, that's assuming that happens. Like I mentioned earlier, she is ranged, meaning there's a chance they'll never even touch her because they'll never get close enough. Her strong tech 3 is also pretty much built to keep enemies away, so you know, that's a plus. Speaking of strong techs, they all do a pretty good amount of damage. She has a pretty high SP, although she doesn't have frenzy, and while her attack isn't the highest, it's actually not bad. Still, this combination of ranged DR healing means that she is very effective in both single player and co-op, though it might take longer than most characters. Now before we get to number 1, here are a few characters that are extremely good at auto, but didn't quite make it on the list for one reason or another, which I'll cover in the explanation video linked in the description below.
行くぜグランレイせろさっさと死にやがれ見たまえ僕の素晴らしい実験の成果だよ君にはお似合いさ邪魔はさせない蒼天に座って氷輪丸
4歩のうちに踏みしめた空間の地水火風の全てを凍結する視界氷結
仰せのままにいかがでしょう挽回水無月雑境はこれにておしまい
Now finally at number 1 is Yachiru Imahana, who, let's be real, all of you saw coming, and it probably prompted so many calling it Yachiru's a number 1 before even watching the video comments. That's right, I pay attention. Still though, this character deserves to be at number 1. She has damage reduction, she's a healer, and she has poise and flurry. That's like everything that the other characters had put into one character, with the exception of status elements. She also has the highest attack in the game, and a really fast snap speed, which is something that all the other poise and flurry characters are lacking. In addition to all of this, she also has a pretty decent defense. That's on top of her damage reduction that can be stacked up to 76%. It's pretty insane for one character to have all of these qualities, and they're what make her the absolute best choice for number 1 on this list. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this list, hit like and subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more top 10 lists.